Welcome to Manager Tools. Today's show, change leadership number 1. What's my visual? In today's show, we describe how to begin any effort to change an organization. Unfortunately, during this show, there were some audio problems on my side. And unfortunately, you're going to hear some echo in my voice occasionally. I apologize, and we're going to try to fix that in the future. But unfortunately, during the recording, there was something wrong with my equipment. And I didn't want to throw out the show simply because of an echo. So with that mea culpa, here we go. Have you ever been in an organization and there's some change management process going on, right? There's something really important. Somebody's decided, the CEO or somebody high up decides that they want to change everything, and then middle managers, we're stuck in the middle, right?
You think? Yeah. In fact, I got to tell you, everything you read about change is about what the CEO should do, and in fact, I want to say a few years ago that our Business Review had an article about why middle managers are it. They're the important piece. They're the connective tissue of the company. But yeah, you're at the top and our team wants more information and we don't get it and we have to make decisions. And yeah, we definitely feel the pinch. I've been there.
Yeah. And it's, I find it really hard. I mean, I'm a smart guy sometimes. I listen to what my boss has to say. I got all the facts, got all the details. I've got this logical argument. So I put it all together. I put my 50-page detailed presentation together. I present it to my folks. I'm excited about it. And they walk out of the meeting and I don't know, they just don't look real excited.
Yeah.
I don't get it. It makes perfect logical sense.
What's that joke about more cowbell? You need more spreadsheets. Look, there is a better way. When we work with corporate clients and when we help with a change effort in organizations, it's very easy. You run a change playbook in much the same way that we believe that in a downturn, you need to be ready to run your job change playbook. And once you start hearing rumors of layoffs or something is not going well, you just run the playbook. It's that simple. We have a playbook when it comes to change. And every initiative, every effort is different, but they all fall under, they all are built around a skeleton of the playbook. And perhaps the biggest surprise to people is that the first step in any change effort is an emotional appeal to those who are going to be involved in changing, those who are going to have to change. And people just don't get that. And there's a reason why, which we'll talk about, but you don't get emotional change, which leads to behavioral change, with financially solid or even clever spreadsheets or big profit numbers. People don't feel emotional about those things, or even a clear cost benefit of, hey, it'll only take us this much more work and we get this huge bang for the buck or this huge ROI. Those don't work to change people. The business loves them, but they don't work. And so what we've learned is that visual, emotional persuasion is the single biggest idea we have ever come across when it comes to change efforts. If you do this well, other stuff, the rest of the process of making the change in the organization, flowing the change through the organization is much easier. And if you don't do this, everything afterwards in the change effort is much harder.
Good. Okay. So given that visual emotional persuasion is the biggest idea we've seen around change, what's our playbook look like?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. We have 5 points to make in this cast. The first one is emotions, not facts, are what cause change. And this is just human biology 101. Sorry, folks. Number 2, too many managers, and this is where we go wrong, and this will be helpful, I think, to many folks. Too many managers try to shoehorn our analysis into an influence move, and it's not. It never works that way.
I've never done that.
Yeah. Look, my analysis is perfect. Why don't you want to follow me?
Exactly.
Right? Number 3, to spark change, you've got to create a visually compelling story, or image. And because everybody's organization is different, we'll give you some ideas about how to do that. But we're also going to share, our fourth point is 4 different examples of visual, compelling stories or image that led to successful change efforts, to give some idea of what it might look like, how it might feel, the thinking behind it, and places we've been where we've seen this work. And then the last one, point 5, is we're going to suggest a little bit of synergy at Manager Tools, which is, as a way to make this easier for folks, we want to brainstorm in the forums about ways that people can have an effective first step in their change process by using the forums and encouraging people to say, okay, here's my situation. Here's my problem. Here's what I want to change. What's my visual story? And that's why we titled the show, what's my visual? So that people can start thinking, what would the visual be if I was going to lead a change effort? And we'll help.
Awesome. Okay. Well, this idea that emotions and not facts are what cause change is got to be the single biggest problem with change efforts, both large and small, right? In organizations of every size. And most of us, myself included in the past.
Yeah, me too. Oh, me too. No question.
We mistakenly believe that we can convince others, right? Through data and through analysis and through presentations of all the details. We think we can convince others about the rightness of our plan and therefore motivate them. We believe that if they know the data the way we do, they're going to come to the same conclusions we have relative to what needs to get done. And unfortunately, we've seen no evidence at all that suggests that is true.
Yeah. It's funny. I actually think that we get confused. We'll talk more about this in a minute, but I actually think we get confused in that we feel emotional about the stuff we're looking at. Because if we're on the team, if we're asked to lead it, we're trying to figure out what works for us. We find what works for us. And then we don't translate into, okay, how might that work for my folks? And so we actually are feeling something pretty good when we look at our ROI and say, wow, that's a lot. But part of our emotion is also, I'm going to look good. This is going to help me. I'm leading something here, and this is going to make me better and make my results better. And I might get promoted and my boss might like me more. And I think that's part of the problem.
Good point. Our emotions are about what it means for us, which is, might mean promotion, might mean visibility, might be perception of our effectiveness as leaders, but that doesn't necessarily translate to our directs. They don't get
exactly.
that. Exactly.
They're just going to have to work differently and harder.
Right.
Yeah. And look, you're right. We have almost no evidence of the analytical approach, the convincing people of the rightness and the solidness and the unassailable financial benefit of our plan. You can look outside of business for this too. Think of politics. The same data exists, and populaces everywhere seem all too often just roughly equally divided on things. Household budgets. You look at the same numbers and one spouse says spend and the other spouse says we're going broke. Child rearing, one parent says take it easy, go easy. The other one, same kid, says no excuses, standards. And why is that? It's because of the way all of us think. This is not high D, high I, high S, high C. Even high C's, if you're listening.
Yeah, detail-oriented.
Yeah,
like the numbers,
perfectionists, right? Yeah. Perfectionists and engineers and accountants and IT people. Even the high C's process information the same way as the rest of us. This is a standard model for human behavior, human perception in the world. The world happens around us. Our own individual paradigms filter that world out because we're just surrounded by too much data all the time, right? We think about what our paradigms tell us. So we see or we sense, we filter, we think, and then finally the last step or next to last step is we feel about what we think every single time. After we think, we feel, and then finally we take action. Again, this is not pop psychology. This is not Horstman's 11th law. This is mankind, biology 101. If you can understand this podcast, we're talking about you, okay? You sense, you filter, you think, you feel, and then you act. And only then do you act after you've felt something. And look, think of it this way. All change efforts are ultimately about behavior change, right? How can they not be? If we're leading a change effort and no one changes any of their behaviors, how can we say we succeeded? Right? By definition. Now, people may change their behaviors and we still might not succeed, right? Because we changed into the wrong behaviors. That's certainly possible. But if everybody stays with their old behaviors, change efforts are going to fail. The measure of all change efforts is whether new behaviors help the organization achieve its goals or not.
Right. So if emotion is what causes us to act and new actions are what causes our change efforts to work, it seemed pretty logical that we as change leaders have to listen to emotions in our target audience, right? I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a nice logical argument. But think about it differently. How are you going to get people to give up their old ways without pulling on their heartstrings? And I know some high C's and high D's just went like, heartstrings, geez, wacky. But the fact is, you're not going to get people to give up their old ways without pulling on their emotional side. You're not. And since most of us didn't get any training on heartstrings with our MBAs that told us exactly what to pull and how and what the ROI would be for each one, we better pull pretty damn hard to make sure we reach as many folks as we can.
Yeah. And surely we said it before here that there's a reason, at least in English, why motion and emotion look so close to being almost identical, is they're both rooted in motive force.
Yeah, the words are the same for a reason, because we move because we feel.
Right.
Yep. That's why we say the show moved me, because emotion and motion have the same root. Yep.
Good. Now, lack of understanding of this first point is what leads many of us to get into the problem that we're going to talk about in point two.
Yeah, you and I both in the past have done this. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that is that too many of us try to shoehorn our analysis into influence. And that's just a huge mistake we make as change leaders.
Yeah, we hate to do this. We hate to talk about what everybody does wrong, but we're going to put paid to it now because we want you to know that we understand, we've been there, and we want to make obvious what it is you're doing now and why it doesn't work. And that will increase the chances that you'll be willing to say, okay, I get that. I feel silly. There we go. You feel, and maybe therefore will encourage you to change. Look, think of it this way. See if this doesn't echo your own experience. We're asked to look into options to solve some thorny problem or address some long-standing issue. It might be to drive costs down. It might be to reduce throughput times. It might be to develop a new product for an as yet unserved or even an underserved market. And we get busy working with some others in our little project team. We get excited. We get a bit hopeful. And alternately, maybe we're filled with a little bit of dread. Oh my gosh, now I'm out on the wire and I could fall. Since most of us know that the new change has to produce more revenue at the same cost, or it has to reduce cost, or it has to speed something up, we know that the ultimate analysis of our efforts is going to be cost-benefit analysis. If we increase benefits for the same costs, or we reduce costs while keeping benefits constant, or we even better reduce cost and increase benefit at the same time, then it's likely our idea is going to get implemented, right?
Right.
So we engage in our cost-benefit thing. We find out what project or program or software or process change, whatever we think will work, will have the biggest ROI and the biggest benefit relative to costs, right? And then we make our fatal error. And I speak from experience. We forget that deciding on something is entirely, utterly different than convincing others that that something is rightly decided upon. And we take our analysis, which we've lived with for weeks, months, grown to love. We've grown to look at it every day. And sometimes we hate it. And sometimes we think, well, there's some good CBA in there, right? Good cost benefit analysis. And we see it as its own little entity. It has its own little life in front of us. And we share it with others. We share our analysis. We share our numbers. We share our case with others.
Yeah. And then we wonder why they don't get it.
Yeah. And we go further than that, right? We get angry they don't get it. Jeez, I'm surrounded by stupid people.
Can't you see? It's so clear.
Yeah.
It's so exciting.
And folks, we're not laughing at you. We're not.
We're
laughing with you.
We've done it.
Yeah, we've done it. We do it with each other now. We've both briefed the other person and say, hey, I got an idea. And I've done this, so therefore, and I was like, yeah, no. You're like,
that reminds me of our last ops call, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, it is okay to feel emotion ourselves. about our cost benefit work, our analysis, our the digging that we do, the process changes we make in our head. It's okay to see the insights that we get as moments of excitement. That's a good thing. It's okay to add up all the savings over a year for some change we're going to engage in, assuming everything's going right, and get giddy about a $10 million savings. But it is not smart to assume that others are going to feel that same way. Our analysis of the problem requires different skills, has different outcomes than persuading others to our cause. But what happens is we fail to change gears. And because we keep trying to do analysis, sharing factual information, rather than changing into influence and emotional appeals and thinking about our audience and what will get the change levers moving, what the heartstrings are, our change effort starts off limping. And then what's worse, it drags its other foot right behind. And you start off slow, and generally change efforts that start off slow don't go well.
Yeah, it's good. And it would be a mistake to think that those closest to you, that you don't have to think through the same process.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
I mean, just not to dig up our stuff, but we have our operations call every week. And last ops call, I had this idea that was pretty exciting to me, but I didn't think at all about influencing Mark. And so I just laid out kind of the facts as I saw them, expecting him to get excited about the opportunity. And frankly, it was a complete dud. It didn't go anywhere.
Actually, it was fine until I responded, and then your response was like a dud. It was just so obvious that you just thought I'd be like, "Yeah, dude, awesome."
Exactly.
And I went, "No, dude, stupid." and there was like 2 minutes where Maggie didn't say anything on the call because she's like, ooh.
Yeah, there was clearly some tension going on the call.
Bosses in open disagreement.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. And the point here is maybe this is why we decided to do this cast. I don't think so though. But I sat back.
No.
What I normally do is when I have points of conflict or things don't go as well as I like them to, I sit back and spend literally half an hour walking through it and replaying it in my head and figure, okay, now what am I going to do differently next time? And this was exactly it, is I made the mistake of believing, since we're so close and we're partners, that I didn't have to do a thorough preparation for the briefing, right? I said, oh, you're just going to not roll over, but you're just going to see it the way I do and get excited about it. And so anyways, it'd be a mistake to think that just because folks are close to you, that you don't have to go through this same kind of analysis in terms of appealing to somebody's emotions.
Right.
So
right.
Good. Okay. So now the question is, okay, I got to do it. You've convinced me. Now, how do I do it? What do I do?
Right. And probably this is one of those times where I think it would have been great to have this sooner in the cast, but we had to make the case. So many people are doing it, and we say wrong, but we don't mean that like we're shaking our finger at you folks. We share that story because we do it too. We had to make a case for why things are done the way they are now, to help people see themselves in the old way, to motivate them to go, oh, I get it. I had my aha moment. So sorry it took so long to get here, but now we're to the point where we say, okay, what do we do differently?
Right. And the point here is, if you want to spark change, you got to create a visually compelling story or image.
Yeah. Hopefully everybody remembers, or many people who listen every week will remember our story about slam dunk briefings. It may have been a year ago, maybe in 6 months, maybe been 2 years ago. Young professionals see them happen where a briefing is done in a meeting that they're in, and everyone says, wow, yeah, great, we're there. Good. And the GM or the whatever says, yeah, the conclusion that the young person makes is, I need to learn how to brief like that guy. And, for once, being that guy is a good thing. And they copy this person's briefing style, which, by the way, is influenced by what he or she did before, but it doesn't matter. The fact that the briefing probably turns out better because of what they did before doesn't mean that copying the briefing style is what gives you a slam dunk. And they don't realize it. It's all about the pre-wire, right? That briefing was made a slam dunk long before the actual briefing started. And that's how you get to slam dunk briefings, is you do a pre-wire. That's one of those not apparent lessons, right? It's not apparent in the briefing that that's what caused it. And it's one of those things that when you learn it, The first time you see it and you say, okay, I didn't do that briefing right. And I thought that guy, or, she was really good. I did it the way she did it and it didn't turn out well. You go and talk to him and she says, no, it had nothing to do with my briefing. Actually, I'm a below average briefer, but man, the pre-wire told me everything I needed to know. And when I presented it, I included everybody's input and I compromised and everybody loved it because they all got a little piece of the pie. And that happens and you sort of, you hear that and you kind of let your mouth hang open and you're just like, whoa, I'd never heard of a thing called a pre-wire, right? And you're sort of stunned into a silence and you're thinking, if there are people around, you're furiously thinking, okay, whoa, that's important. I got to go figure that one out. Or you do what Steve Jobs did, like when he first saw the graphical user interface at Xerox PARC. He went, he started jumping up and down. What are you doing with this? How are we going to turn this into something? And the fact is, if we want to have our change recommendations implemented so that cost benefit analysis that we've fallen in love with is actually proven that it works, we must now change our hat to persuading others about the power of our idea. Again, this is how it's done. And the best way to do that is to create a visual story, something the audience can see, literally, which is going to move them. And literally, that means we have to stop. We have to stop what we're doing, stop the analysis and say, okay, now 30,000 feet again. Okay. Or from my folks' perspective, right? Okay. Analysis is over. The question is, how can I make them see and feel what they need to be willing to change their behaviors?
Yeah. Now this is where it gets difficult because, everyone's situation is different. So it's hard to give guidance that's going to apply in every situation. So what we thought we might do today is share 4 examples and then kind of one bonus example when we get to the bottom of it. But as a way of just showing people, here's a particular issue, here's how somebody addressed it. And I think some of the themes will become clear.
Right. And let's go back, right? We can tell you of some things that if you're doing them while you're trying to persuade others, you're probably on the wrong track, right? So wrong track, PowerPoint with bullets. Wrong track, PowerPoint with spreadsheets, which is my personal pet peeve in briefings.
Well, even just spreadsheets by themselves would be the wrong track.
Yeah, right. It is right. Next wrong track. Right. Next wrong track. Nothing to see in your presentation other than bulleted slides, and handouts. And I'm talking about sitting in the room, however the briefing is going to occur. And if the only things I see are the handout you give me, and your slides, if they're projected, that is complete wrong track.
Another wrong track, multiple presenters without other visuals. The idea of throwing multiple presenters in there with the same visuals as a way of creating excitement doesn't work.
Yeah, doesn't work. Yeah. Another wrong track, emotionless rehearsals, right? I mean, where you're literally practicing getting the words right, but you're not telling a story and there's no other visual besides you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like actors going through their script without actually acting. That's
exactly
very useful. and another wrong track, no stories, right? No story to capture people's excitement and interest.
Right.
Just data. No, that didn't work.
Right.
All right, so let's stop there and we'll finish this up next week.
All right, folks, that's it. Thanks for joining us. Hey, if you're in the Seattle, Washington area and you haven't checked out our one-day Effective Manager Conference, we're coming to Seattle on July 14th, 2009. Details are on the website, www.managertools.com. Hope to see you there. All right, folks, we'll see you next week. So long.